When we're looking to find out what our purpose is, we need to look for clues. And some people just know automatically, even as small children, why they're here, what their destiny is, what their plan is. And others need to kind of spend some time figuring it out. And if you're one of the people that needs to kind of figure it out, a good way to sort it out is to think back on what you've always loved. Think back on when you were a small child, and what was it that you were attracted to? Fixing things, designing, nature, music, art, whatever it is, that's a good indication that that's part of your purpose, if it's not your purpose. I know I can think back on when I was a child, and I was always kind of interested in the otherworldly, strange things, unusual things. And that's always fascinated me. So metaphysics is something that I just find to be an absolutely fascinating topic, because it's mysterious, it answers questions, it gives you a sense of who you are. It makes you feel good, it gets rid of anxiety, and it answers those big questions that we like to ask, like, why are we here? You know, what is God? And we get those answers when we study metaphysics. But if you're wondering what your purpose is, there are a few ways that you can approach it. You can say to yourself, all right, if I had all the money in the world and I didn't have to worry about, paying my bills, and if I had access to whatever I needed, what would I love to spend my time doing? What is that thing that I would just love to do more than anything else, not about spending money, not about shopping, but what is it I would just absolutely love to do? And when you hone in on that, that's what your purpose is. That's what you love. Your purpose is something that you absolutely love. You would do it even if you didn't get paid for it. And I told you before, I was a stewardess, and I absolutely loved traveling and meeting people and having conversations with interesting people. So I did forget for about 5 years what I did. When people would say to me, "What do you do?" I couldn't remember, because to me it wasn't even a job. It was just like, going on a vacation all the time. So that's always a good indication that you're living your purpose, if it doesn't seem like work. But another way you can find your purpose is to ask your higher self. As you go to sleep at night, you can always ask your higher self questions like, why am I here? What is my purpose? You can maybe have a situation going on that you need an answer to. You can ask your higher self for an answer. But asking your higher self what your purpose is can be very, very, very effective. I've seen people do this during this 2-day seminar that I like to give, and they will ask their higher self why they're here, and next morning, either when they're in the shower or when they turn on the TV, or something happens that gives them the answer. And it's like, wow. And so many times they've said to me, I woke up and I didn't feel like I had figured it out, what my purpose is. But then all of a sudden, as I was getting ready, it came to me. Something just popped into my head, and I realized that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm meant to do. And sure enough, when they start following through with it and doing it, everything kind of opens up for them in a way that they hadn't even imagined it could. And that's the way it works. When we come here with our purpose is always, because we're all one, we're all connected, it always helps everyone. So it doesn't have to be a big, big project to be our purpose, but in some way it's going to help more than just ourselves. It'll help benefit other people, and it'll be a positive thing for the planet. As opposed to, if you're doing something that's really creepy or destructive, that is not necessarily your purpose in order to destroy. Your purpose is always productive. It's always moving us ahead. It's always solving problems, and it's a good thing. You can have many purposes throughout your life, depending on, what you came here to do. Sometimes, you spend one part of your life raising a family or engaging in something that's developing you so that the next phase of your life you'll be ready for it. Different purposes come in different stages, and that's just all part of it, going with the flow and realizing when you look back, oh, if I hadn't done that and that and that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So even if it seems like a setback sometimes, that can be part of our purpose. I know when I had this thing that I called Lyme disease for a while, I was feeling so badly. It actually gave me more compassion for people who have terrible chronic illnesses. And I realized how devastating it could be to be trapped in something like that and feeling like there's no way out. So it was actually a positive thing in that sense before I got rid of it and woke up to the realization that it wasn't any part of me. Well, as soon as I stepped foot in the friendly skies, I've said this before, I started to meet teachers. They came in all different forms. My first teacher was a man whose uncle had been a famous metaphysical teacher. And he was this man taught me the art of creative visualization when I was 21 years old. And that worked so well for me that I became really fascinated by the whole subject of manifesting, visualizing, spirituality, and it put me on the path. And I started reading books and experimenting, and one thing just kept leading to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And as I look back, I realized, I guess that's why I came here, to, kind of explore these different things like remote viewing, psychic abilities, spiritual healing, all these fascinating things, and then turn around and teach it. So that's what I'm doing. The physical world is a place where we explore time. We have time and space in this physical world, but we come from a place where we're eternal, and in that other place that we come from, the spiritual dimension, it's already been decided really what maybe the big events of our life might end up being. I've decided. And within that context, we get to learn lessons. We get to take on challenges, and it's almost like being in school, taking a test every now and then. And it's kind of like, what do I do now in order to pass the test? Or do I want to repeat the lesson and learn this over again? And so I think that's one aspect of why we come here. The other aspect is we definitely come in here with our own individual personality, energy, vibration, purpose, and that purpose is meant to be shared with the rest of the world in some way. And here we are. And I do think there's already a predetermined plan for us before we come into this dimension. But then we have free will, and it's up to us what we do with it. The more we surrender the ego part of ourselves to the higher self, the more the ride we're on is going to be just sort of effortlessly flowing in the right direction. It's up to us whether or not we want to put those stumbling blocks in the way. But none of us are going to be living a completely blissful life while we're in this three-dimensional world. It just doesn't operate that way. There's always a challenge somehow, some way that we deal with, because that's part of why we're here, is to grow. And this is a dimension of great contrast. We have good and evil. We have, everything is one end or the other. And our job is to find that equanimity, that balance, that place where we can be where none of it moves us. And it's like when we finally get to that place, we've sort of passed the test. The clues are always all around you as far as what your purpose is. You really need to meditate on what it is that you absolutely love. What is it that you would do if you didn't have to worry about whether or not you made a living at it? What is it that really floats your boat? And when you figure that out, then you have realized what your purpose is, because you're supposed to be having a good time while you're here. It's not that it's not going to be challenging, but you need to enjoy it. You know, like one time I had this woman on my flight who happened to be the Secretary of State at the time. And, you know, the world looked like it was going through a lot of turmoil. And I said, wow, you have a very stressful job. She looked at me and she said, honey, I'm having the time of my life. And I realized, you know, we look at people like the President of the United States or, you know, the head of this or that, and we think, oh, what a stressful situation. They wouldn't be there if they didn't love it. That's their purpose. So we all have our own unique purpose while we're here. And what can look like a really, you know, stressful, difficult situation for one person can be actually quite delightful to the person who's living it. We can never judge what someone's purpose is meant to be. Well, we live in this world where there are all kinds of beings. You know, we're all here for one of the purposes is to wake up, or to try to wake up while we're here. But not everybody is waking up. You know, we're living in a world where a lot of people are sleepwalking, kind of living in a trance. And mystics have known this, that when you're really awake, you know, everything changes. But not everybody's interested in waking up. And that's just the way it is, you know. Some people are asleep, some people are awake. I mean, it's also been said that there are people living among us who have the purpose of just being because of their certain vibration. That when they're in an environment, they bring more peace and harmony to the situation. So it's not really necessary for them to do an awful lot. I mean, we have a lot of these young people that are being born now that don't speak. They're autistic. But they might have a very special mission while they're here to bring some sort of different energy into this vibration, this experience. So we never know sometimes what someone's purpose is. You know, they know through their higher self, but it's interesting that some people don't have to really do anything. They can just be who they are, and that's enough. Some people we play different roles in our incarnations, and some people have the role of caregiver, and some people have the role of being, you know, the invalid or the victim. I've spoken about victim before. You can really break out of the victim mold once you realize that you're connected to this divine source energy, and then you take charge of your life. And, you know, that happens when you move along the path and begin to wake up. Well, it's not really the time that you're here in this dimension, it's the quality of while you're here. And time is irrelevant. You know, you can really have given up on life halfway through it and live to be, you know, a much, much older person, but, you know, you're just kind of existing. Or you can have a very short life where you get an awful lot done and you're a role model to a lot of people, or you bring something really passionate into this dimension, and then you're gone. So it really has nothing to do with time. length of years that you're here are irrelevant. Everyone seems to have a different mission or agenda that they're on. I mean, I've certainly known people, having lived through 9/11, whose lives were gone at a very young age relative to others. But and I've often asked, why them? You know, why were they the ones that had to go through that? Being a part of the airline industry, I was very close to it. But you can't really get all the answers sometimes. But I can say that everyone who's here is here for a reason and has an impact, and leaves a lot of ripples when they leave. And there's always a reason for everything, but we don't really know all of the answers all the time. When you need to get answers, if you go within and you listen to the wrong voice, you can get off track. You need to be able to discern the true message that your inner voice is giving you, the one that's leading you in the right direction. A couple of times in my life, I've heard this male voice off to the left side of me that's given me direction that has been completely accurate. And I like to read books written by people who have gone through awakenings or have been on the spiritual path. And many other people, talk about hearing a voice every now and then that will guide them or tell them what they need to know in the right moment. And it makes me realize that we're not alone. And if we think we're alone and we think that we have to figure everything out by ourselves, that's a lonely journey. When we begin to realize that through our intuition and our spiritual sense and our ability to tap into this other knowing, we can be guided. It's a much more comforting journey to be on. It's a much more joyous journey, and we can have a better time.